Are you guys able to hear me? Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Now
Yes,
you're
sir.
audible.
Yes, sir, you're,
Now I'm audible.
sir,
Okay,
now
right,
you're
right.
audible.
Thank you. All right. So I hope you can see my screen. And yeah, today's
Sir, we cannot see your
lecture.
Sir, your screen is blank.
Is it? Just give it a half a minute or so. Has it loaded?
No,
Oh.
sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Let me just stop and share once again. Okay. I lost this. Okay. How about now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So today we are going to continue with where we left off in last class. In last class, we started looking at the MOSFET and we looked at the different views of MOSFET. Cross-sectionally, how does it look like? If you kind of take a perspective view, how does the MOSFET look like? And we looked at the notion of threshold voltage. So all these concepts are things that you have already studied, but this is just a refresher so that all of us are on the same page. Okay. Now, today, what we will do is just we will look at the current equations and we look at the regions of operation and how the MOSFET can be used in each of the regions. All right. So, just to recap, so we had these source and drain region, right? And this is your oxide layer. This is your metal or polysilicon. Okay, so each process is different. Like some of the processes use polysilicon, which is a good conductor. Some of the processes, especially 28 nanometer and below, they have started to use metal gates back again. All right. Now, we said that the voltage that is applied here, the gate voltage, and with respect to the source voltage, the gate to source voltage should be equal to the threshold voltage for the inversion layer to be formed. And we saw in last class, when we said an inversion layer, it is basically, this is a P minus substrate, which is a lightly doped P type substrate. And there is an excess of holes, a little excess of holes. But when you put a positive voltage on this side, the electrons gather on the underside of this oxide layer, and there is sufficient amount of electrons which have gathered under this oxide layer such that it forms a channel. And now this is what is called as the inversion layer or the channel formation. And according to the more classical model of equations, we say that the current is equal to 0 for the gate to source voltage less than the threshold voltage. Now this has to be, as I mentioned in last class, taken with a pinch of salt, but because this is kind of true for some of the older technology nodes. Let's say you talk about a 1 micron or a 2 micrometer channel length device. This is probably quite true, but this is not exactly true for modern CMOS processes like, let's say, 180 nanometer or 65 nanometer or 28 nanometer and so on. So we will look at what is happening a little later for VGS less than VTH. Now, for the purpose of this discussion, let's assume that the gate to source voltage is greater than the threshold voltage. Okay, so which means that the channel has been formed, right? And not only has the channel been formed, we saw in last class, if the drain to source voltage, that is for VDS equal to 0, the current remains 0. That is, the channel is formed, but both the source and the drain are sitting at the same potential. I gave the example of two, bowls of water sitting at the same height. Even if you have a connection between the two, if both are at the same height, there is going to be no current flow or water flow, or in this case, there is going to be no current flow. Now, for VDS greater than 0, the current starts flowing, right? So now what happens to this particular channel is that let us say that we have given a certain VD. All right. So this is a positive. Let's say this is equal to some V. Right. So this is a positive voltage. Okay. So now what happens? this is more positive than the source side, and therefore the electrons are going to flow in this direction, right? And because the electrons are flowing in this direction, the current direction is going to be in the opposite direction. So which is why we say that ID, the drain current, flows from drain to source, because the electrons are flowing from source to drain. Okay. Now we understand why it is called as source and why it is called as drain, because the source is basically, the source of electrons, and drain is where, the electrons are kind of draining out to, right? And which is why it is called as the source and the drain. And the current direction is from drain to source. All right. Now, how much is the current that is flowing? Okay. So in order to know how much current is flowing, let's say the current can be given as the charge density into the velocity of electrons. So V here is basically the velocity of the electrons in the channel, and QD is nothing but the mobile charge density. Now, when we say mobile charge density, it basically refers to the electrons that are free to move, and what is the charge density, and this is given in terms of coulomb per meter, and of course velocity is meter per second, and obviously when you put both together you get the unit of coulomb per second, which is nothing but ampere, the unit of current. Okay, so we are talking about the charge, it is the cross sectional charge density. All right. So now, if we are interested, so basically when we are interested in the charge that is there per meter, now how can we represent it? So, we know that Q is equal to CV. Here we can see that there is a capacitance in existence, right? It is like you have metal on top, you have a dielectric material, which is your oxide, and on the other side, you have a conductive layer, which is your inversion layer. So this is nothing but a parallel plate capacitor. And for a capacitor, the charge is given by capacitance into the voltage across it, right? Now, what is the effective capacitance? Now, the capacitance can be written as width into Cox. Now, Cox is the capacitance per unit width. Okay, and this is basically the width of the MOSFET. So we saw which is the dimension which we are talking about. The width of the MOSFET is basically the parameter, or rather the dimension of the MOSFET, which goes into the plane of your screen right now, right? We are looking at the cross-sectional view. The width is the dimension which is going into the plane of your screen, right? So width into Cox is going to give you the total capacitance in that particular total capacitance of the channel, or it is going to be the capacitance per unit length, right? And multiplied by the voltage across it. Now, the voltage here, which causes the capacitance or causes the charge to exist, is basically the gate to source voltage minus the threshold voltage. Okay, this is because it needs at least a VTH for the channel to exist, right? And the mobile charge which is going to be there is what is because of the voltage which is over and above the threshold voltage. Okay. Now this quantity VGS minus VTH, this is something that we will be using quite often in our analysis and design of our circuits. This is what is called as the overdrive voltage. Okay. That is to say, you need at least the threshold voltage for the channel to form. How much are you overdriving it? Okay, so this is your overdrive voltage, and this gives us the charge that is there in the channel. All right. Now, not only is the VGS in play, if you kind of look closely at this channel that has been formed, right? Let's say you have your two N plus regions. So this is given to some VGS, source is grounded, and let's say we have given some potential VD. Now, if you look at this channel, if you look close to this drain region, if you pick a point which is close to this drain region, the voltage that is there in the channel is basically going to, what is the effective voltage here? You have VGS here, and the channel potential here is, as you move closer and closer to the drain, this channel potential is going to move closer and closer to the voltage VD. Okay. In other words, you can think of the potential in the channel to be something like this. Okay. Or rather, the channel width is going to be like this. If you draw correspondingly, okay, across the length of the channel, right, the potential of the channel is going to be quite low over here, and it's going to be high on at this particular point. That is because there is a potential at the drain end, and the source end, it is ground, right? So this potential has to get distributed physically across the channel, right? And so it has a certain distribution across the channel. All right. So let's call this as V of X, where V of X is the channel potential. Now this channel potential is arising because of two separate potentials on either ends of the channel. All right. Okay. So now the effective Q equation gets modified as Q, instead of becoming a simple Q, it becomes Q becomes a function of X. And this is W into Cox into VGS minus V of X minus VTH, right? Because we are now interested in what is the gate to channel potential, right? Earlier we assumed that both VD was at 0, VS was at 0, and therefore the gate to channel potential was only VGS, right? Now when you have a non-zero VD and a VS which is equal to 0, you have a certain channel potential, and it can be written like this. All right. Now we can write the current equation to be something like this: minus W, minus because the flow of electrons and the flow of current is in the opposite direction, right? V Cox into VGS minus V of X minus VTH multiplied by this component velocity. Now what is velocity? Velocity, you might remember, is equal to the mobility of the electrons, which is given by mu n.
Sir, why there is a minus?
Yeah, because the current direction is opposite to that of the flow of electrons, right?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay.
So mu n into E, which is the electric field. So which is the electric field which is there in the channel. Now again, electric field itself is going to be a function of X, right? This is what is X, right? The channel length across the channel. Now, therefore, V can also be written as basically minus mu n into dV by dx. Okay. What is electric field? It is potential, the derivative of the potential with respect to the distance. And this is what we get. And therefore, putting everything together, we get the current equation to look something like this. The negative sign goes off, Cox, VGS minus V of X minus VTH mu n dV by dx. All right. Now you can integrate it like this. You can bring the dx this side. So it becomes X integrated from 0 to capital L being the channel length. ID into dx is equal to integral of V going from 0 to, let's say this is your drain voltage. Okay. And you have W Cox, you have VGS minus V of X minus VTH into mu n into dV, right? So now if you integrate both sides and if you evaluate the integral, the current equation turns out to be something like this: mu n Cox W by L, you have VGS minus VTH into VDS, because the source is at ground potential. The drain to source voltage is written here as, or rather, you basically here everything is reference to the potential of the source, and therefore you write everything as related to the source potential. So you write VGS minus VTH into VDS minus half VDS squared. Now this is the classic current equation, and this is the equation of the channel of the MOSFET when the MOSFET is in what is called as the triode region. Okay. A triode region of the MOSFET. All right. Now, if you look at this, the why we call it as the triode region, what are the other regions? We'll come to it soon. Now, before that, if you look at this channel again, I said that,
Sir?
yes.
Sir, I couldn't follow the VX profile. Can you say why does it follow such a profile again?
Okay, yeah. So here, if you see, this is your channel. All right. So maybe what I will do is, yeah, let me use this one itself. Okay. So let us say when there is no VD, right? So for VD equal to 0, let me say VD equal to 0 in black color. Let me say the channel looks like this. All right. The channel is pretty much uniform, right, across the entire channel, that is from source to drain. Okay, because you only have a VGS which is greater than VTH, right? And both drain and source are at the same potential. All right. Now, when you start increasing VD, okay, now what happens? One end of the channel has got a lower potential, which is, let's say for this example, let's say VS is 0. And now let us say you are increasing the drain potential to 100 millivolt. All right. So now what happens? It cannot remain the same because in the vicinity of the drain, you're going to have a lower effective, gate to channel potential. So let's think of what is called as gate to channel voltage difference. Okay. So at this point, here you're going to have a little lower gate to channel voltage because here it is going to be, let's say, 100 millivolt. And let's say your VTH, let's put some numbers so that it's a little clearer. Let's say the VTH is 0.4 volt. And let's say your VGS is 0.65 volt. Okay. So here the gate to channel potential is going to be 250 millivolt, right? Or rather, VGS minus VT directly comes here. The overdrive voltage here is 250 millivolt, whereas here it is going to be only 150 millivolt of effective overdrive. Correct? Because you have already raised the drain potential. So the channel will basically look like this, or rather, if I use this as the reference, the channel is going to look like this. All right. Now, if you kind of extrapolate it, not extrapolate, if you kind of start stepping up VD, all right. So let's say initially I'm kind of zooming in here and trying to draw. This was for the case of, this is for the case of VD equal to 0. And let's say for VD equal to, let's say 100 millivolt. And again, let's assume the same thing. VTH is 0.4 volt. Gate to source voltage is 0.65 volt. Okay. So you effectively have only 150 millivolt, right? Now, if you make, let's consider another case. Let's say this line is VD equal to 250 millivolt. Now, what will happen?
To 0.
At this point, close to the drain, right? Your VGS is 0.65 and your VTH is already 0.4, right? And your overdrive is supposed to be 250 millivolt, but your VDS itself has now risen to 250 millivolt, which means for this particular case, there is going to be zero channel at the drain end, right? And the channel is going to look something like this. Does it make sense? Right? Basically, at the drain end, at the edge of the drain, you can kind of think of it as the channel is just existing, right? It's just forming the inversion layer. There is no free charge beyond that, right? So this is how the channel behaves. And when you increase VD even beyond, okay, let's pick another color here. let's say VD is equal to 350 millivolt. Now it is obvious that there is no channel in the vicinity of the drain. So the channel itself is going to look something like this. All right. Okay. So what happens in this region? In this region, it is just going to be a diffusion region. All right. So this is what is called as pinch off. Okay. So this property, whatever I described to you with some numbers, is basically what is called as pinch off. Now, what is pinch off? It basically means that the channel gets pinched off at the drain end. All right. Notice that at the source end, it is still the original value. Okay. Now, where at which point does this pinch off happen? As we saw here, VD equal to 250 millivolt. What is this 250 millivolt? It is nothing but VGS minus VTS. So pinch off happens when VDS becomes equal to VGS minus VTS. That is, the VDS is such that it is exactly equal to the overdrive voltage, right? Where it makes it such that the channel is just formed, right? In other words, you can just you can also say that VDS minus VGS becomes equal to the threshold voltage, right? So that just the threshold voltage alone has been achieved at the drain end of things. Or in other words, as I mentioned, VDS equal to VGS minus well, sorry, I think I mixed up the polarity here. So it's got to be, I think, VGS minus VDS is equal to VTH, right? Or in other words, this is the condition for pinch off. All right. Okay. Now, why is this pinch off important? Right. Now you can go here, and if you look at this expression that we have written, right, where as long as if you were to plot this expression 1, let me write this once again, which is mu n Cox W over L. It is VGS minus VTH into VDS minus half VDS squared, right? So it is literally a parabolic expression, right? So if you plot it for various values of VGS and look at ID, right? For a particular value of VDS, it's going to increase. Right? Sorry, this is not VGS. I'm sorry. This is VDS, right? For particular, if you plot across VDS, it's basically kind of going to look like a parabola. But what happens is, if you find out what is the maximum value is here, it turns out that ID max here happens to be when VDS is equal to VGS minus VTH. Okay, that's the inflection point of your parabola. This is easy to derive. You can just set the derivative to 0, and you will see that this is your ID max. Now, as I mentioned, this condition is something that we just now saw. This is where the pinch off happens. Now, when the pinch off happens, what happens is no longer does your VDS have any control over your current. All right. Now, what has happened after this pinch off? There is a diffusion region between the channel and your drain, and therefore, whatever electron flow electrons are there, they reach this point, and afterwards they are just swept across this barrier. So those of you who go deeper into device physics, you will look at the energy levels and so on, and you will know that at this point, the energy band diagram and all aligns in such a way that the electrons get literally swept across to the drain region. Okay. In other words, beyond pinch off, what happens is the VDS has no control over ID. Now, please do understand that I'm not going very deep into device physics because that is not the aim of this course. In fact, this is probably the only time that we are kind of going into the device and other things. After that, this is just for you to have a good understanding of the device. After this, we are going to look at only circuits. Okay, so probably this class and next class we will look at some device behavior. After that, we are going to look at only circuits. All right. So if you want to have a deeper explanation and so on, of course, the MTech students, you have the physics of microelectronic devices, where you will be learning this in greater detail. And also BTech students, you have already had a VLSI course or a microelectronics course where you have gone through these things again. All right. So VDS has no control over ID beyond pinch off. And therefore, what happens to this curve is that after this kind of remains constant. All right. Now, this curve is something that all of you have looked at. This is very similar to the output characteristics of your BJT. And this is the same for your MOSFET also. All right. So here, if I were to redraw this curve, right, I can say that, there is this linear region. Okay. If you look at very small, so this graph I'm drawing between ID and VDS. X-axis is the drain to source voltage and Y-axis is the drain current. So if you look at this particular equation, for very small VDS, right, it is going to look pretty much linear, right? So let me write this there. For very small VDS, ID is going to look something like this. You can approximate it to mu n Cox W over L VGS minus VTH into VDS. Okay, so it's kind of going to have a linear dependence between VDS and IDS. So which means that at this point, very close to the origin, this is a very linear section of the curve, right? And then beyond that, what happens? The half VDS squared term starts kicking in, and therefore you have the quadratic behavior, right? Or rather the parabolic behavior. Now all this happens till you reach this point, VDS equal to VGS minus VTH. And beyond this, what happens? The pinch off happens, and therefore the curve remains straight. Okay. Now this is what is, this region is called as the triode region, which is the region left of VDS equal to VGS minus VTH. And the region to the right of this particular mark is basically what is called as the saturation region. All right. Now, please do understand, if you are more familiar with BJTs, the term saturation region is used in this particular area for BJTs. All right. That's because of the phenomenon, the physical phenomenon which happens in the BJT, right? That you call this region as the saturation region in BJT, and you'll call this as the linear region or the active region in a BJT. But whereas in a MOSFET, because of the way that the device works, right? This region on the right hand side is called as your saturation region. This is called as either the linear region, okay, especially the linear region is down here, or this entire thing is called as the triode region. So please don't kind of confuse yourself between BJT and MOSFETs. In MOSFET, this is the terminology. All right. Now, because this is beyond which the saturation happens, this particular value, VDS stat, it is called as VDS stat, which is basically equal to VGS minus VTH. All right. So we will be using this expression, or we will be coming across this VD sat. Often it is called as VD sat for the convenience of pronouncing. Okay. This is the voltage beyond which the behavior of the MOSFET acts in a saturation region. All right. So far, are there any questions? Okay. All right. So far, yes.
So what about the resistance in the channel, sir?
Okay, I'll come to that now. Just give me some time. I will come to that. We will talk about resistance, on resistance, drain to source resistance, and so on. Okay. Okay, just bear with me for some. All right. Yeah. So just to conclude, kind of summarize, we saw three regions. One is basically the cutoff region, where VGS is less than VTH, where we saw that ID equal to 0, All right, and then we saw the triode region where VGS is greater than VTH and VDS is less than VGS minus VTH, right? And ID is given by mu n Cox W over L VGS minus VTH into VDS minus half VDS squared, right? And VDS, then we also saw the saturation region where
Half
VGS is
VDS
greater
square
than
won't be there.
VDS. Okay, that is for that approximation is for very small VDS. Okay, this entire region is basically the triode region. All right.
Okay, sir.
This whole thing is the triode region. You know, the nomenclature keeps changing. Some people call it the linear region, triode region. But technically speaking, you know, this part, you know, is this region is kind of the linear region. Okay. I mean, the whole thing is called as triode. Here it is even more linear. Here there is some kind of a bending which happens. All right. So a different textbook might have slightly different distinction between the two, but this is the triode region. For very small VDS, you don't have the VDS squared term. All right. So for saturation region, you have VDS equal to greater than or equal to VGS minus VTH, and the current equation becomes basically mu n Cox W over L. Here you just substitute VDS equal to VGS minus VTH, and what you get is basically divide by 2 VGS minus VTH the whole square. All right. How you get this expression? Basically, what you do is you put VDS equal to VGS minus VTH because this is the constant current which is going to hold throughout the saturation region, and this is what you get. Right. If you substitute here for VDS, this is what you would get. Now, this is what is called as the traditional square law expression. Now, this is the classic square law expression because here what we are saying is that the current in the channel has a quadratic dependence on the gate to source voltage when the thing is in saturation. You understood? All right. So now we can kind of look at what is called as the input characteristics. All right. Now input characteristics is plotted as ID versus VGS. So your x-axis is going to be VGS and your y-axis is going to be ID. All right. Now this can be plotted for different values of VDS. All right. But if you take any particular value, ideally you should see, okay, the ideal curve should kind of look like zero current till VTH, right? And after that you have a quadratic dependence on the voltage. Okay, so basically this one is proportional to VGS minus VTH the whole squared. All right, so this is what is called as the classical square law equation. Now what we would see is that this equation is valid only for some longer channel length devices. All right, if you are looking at some 1 micron device or 2 micron, 4 micron MOSFET devices, that is the channel length equal to 1 micron or channel length equal to 2, 4 micron devices. The older MOSFET devices, this behavior is very much true. All right. But whereas this is not true for deep submicron processes, like let's say 180 nanometer, 130, 90, 65, and so on, this model is not exactly true. So we will look at why it is not true and other things in probably the next class. All right. Now, if you look at the output characteristics.
Sir,
Yes.
in the input characteristics, like we have to plot for different VDS, right?
Yeah, you will see that as long as it's in the saturation region, you will not see much change actually.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. You will kind of see some change here where, I mean, typically this is plotted for, VDS, which is really large. So which means that it is pretty much always in saturation region. Okay. So for example, if you keep the VDS at, let's say, 1 volt, and then you're sweeping the VGS from let's say 0 to 1 volt, okay, for a supply voltage of 1 volt, what you will see is that all through the thing, the device is basically in saturation region. Okay. Now for output characteristics, of course, you basically plot ID versus VDS for different VGS values. Now here what will happen is the x-axis is basically VDS and you have ID. I had already plotted this example. So you will see that it kind of has like this. Let's say this is for some VGS 1. If you have a higher VGS, what will happen? You will end up with a higher, let's say this is ID1. Now let's say you have, you double the VGS, or what will happen to the current? The current should increase by 4 times, right? Because there's a quadratic dependence. So let's say this is another VGS2, and this will be your, let's say ID2, where here VGS2 is greater than VGS1. All right. So this is how your MOSFET is basically going to look like. All right. Now, there was a question about the resistance. Now, I want you to look at this particular region, right? So if maybe I can go back to this thing, this shaded region I mentioned it's extremely linear. And how is this equation? The approximate equation, you see that this is your current quantity, and this is your voltage. Sorry, this is not your voltage. This is your voltage quantity. Correct. Now, for a given value of VGS, how does this behave? So you have, I mean, for a given, let me just rewrite the expression here. Right? Let's say in the linear region where VDS is very small, right? The current expression can be written as mu n Cox W by L VGS minus VTH into VDS, right? Now, if you, for a given VGS, what happens? This whole thing is a constant. Now, what is the relationship now? How does the MOSFET behave here?
Linearly with VTS.
Linearly with VGS. So what element behaves like that?
Register.
It has a resistor, right? So if you want to kind of, so if you take, this is the MOSFET, this is an NMOS transistor, and you're going to put a certain, let's say VGS here. Let's say the source is grounded, right? Between, as long as this voltage VDS is small, right? Between these two terminals, I mean, it need not be always grounded. If this VDS is small, this basically acts as a resistor. All right. And this resistance R is given by nothing. Well, how can you write the resistor? VDS by ID. It becomes 1 over mu n Cox W over L to VGS minus VTH. Now, many times this is what is called as the on resistance of your MOSFET. Okay, why is it called as the on resistance of the MOSFET? So typically, if you look at an inverter, I'm sure all of you are familiar with inverters, right? So let's say this is your NMOS and PMOS transistors, right? Let's say this is your VDD, this is your VIN. Okay, so let us say the VIN goes high, you have an effective parasitic capacitance here. Let's call it a CL. Now, what will this MOSFET do? Basically, when the input goes high, the job of this MOSFET is to discharge this capacitor, right? Earlier, this was at VDD, the output goes from high to low, right? Now, as the voltage drops, right? What happens is after it comes to a smaller value in this region is basically that the transistor is on. It is acting as a switch. right? And as long as your on resistance is really small, you can kind of model it as a resistor whose value is like this. So equivalently, in this region, right, you can kind of say that it is like this capacitor which has been discharged through this resistor, and this value of this on resistance is what is given here. Now here there is again another interesting aspect. You can see that there is one variable here. Of course, here we said that for a given VGS, this acts as being a constant. But if you slightly change the value of VGS, what happens? The value of the resistance changes. In other words, you can say that this value is a function of VGS. In other words, we can say that this easily acts as a voltage controlled resistor. So that is a MOSFET which is acting in the deep triode region. That's another name you will see in different textbooks and papers, different names being used. In the linear region or in the deep triode region, which is basically, kind of this region of operation, right? It acts as a voltage controlled resistor. You can very well see here for VGS1, it has a certain slope. For VGS2, it has a different slope, right? And what can you say about this resistance? As VGS increases, what will happen to the resistance? R will decrease, right? Because it's in the denominator. Another thing that you can talk about here is this: as W by L ratio, that is the width to length ratio of the MOSFET increases, what happens to the resistance? Decreases. All right. So let us say you're designing a switch. Okay, we will look at those examples also. Let's say you want to have a switch and you want the on resistance of the switch to be really low. What will you go and do? Either you increase the VGS or you increase your W by L ratio. Okay, so which is why if you want to have a low on resistance switch using MOSFET, you design a switch which has a large W by L ratio. Okay, and obviously you will end up with a low resistance switch. All right, so a MOSFET acts as a very good switch. Okay, which is why we prefer CMOS technology for digital logic, and in fact, probably most of the digital ICs that are there in the world right now, that are being produced in the world right now, are all CMOS based ICs, purely because that MOSFET is a much better switch than a BJT. Okay. And also, under the condition that VDS is really small, you can use this MOS transistor as a variable resistor or a voltage controlled resistor. But this can be used only when the VDS is really small. That is the thing. All right. So I will conclude today's class with this. Are there any questions, any doubts?
So,
Yes.
so in saturation regions, this resistance has no significance then, sir. So if
Not
we
at
are
all.
operating, as an inverter, sir, we are operating in cutoff region, either in cutoff or in saturation. So this resistance has no
You will
significance.
actually, no, you will operate it in cutoff or in linear region. Okay. So that's because I'll show you why it is. Let's say your VDD is 1 volt. Okay. VDD is 1 volt for all the deep submicron processors. I think from 45 nanometer onwards, the supply voltage is 1 volt. Okay. 45, 28, 22, 16 nanometer, 14 nanometer and all that supply voltage is 1 volt. Okay. So let us say this voltage is 0 and it goes to 1 volt. All right. Now, you are right that at this particular point, okay, it acts in the saturation region. But beyond that, it becomes triode region, because let's say the VGS goes, the gate voltage goes to 1 volt. And here the threshold voltage will be typically around 0.35 volt or 0.3 volt. Let's just take it as 0.3 volt. All right, for example. Okay. Now, for VDS greater than 0.7 volt, okay, it will be in the saturation region. That is, this output, the transistor is basically, I mean, the output is transitioning from 1 volt to ground, right? 1 volt to 0. So up to this point, let's say this is 0.7, this is going to be in the saturation region, right? Beyond that, this is going to be in the linear, or the, let me just call it as the triode region. Okay, so in this entire region, this is in the triode. So when the inverter has flipped its state, right, and the output has gone to 0 volt, your VDS is 0 and your VGS is 1 volt, right? So obviously it is definitely in your triode region or linear region, which is why for a switch, okay, MOSFET as a switch, okay, it operates either in cutoff or in triode. Of course, in the transition, it just has a very small duration where it happens to be in the saturation region, but beyond that, it comes into the triode region. All right. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So switches operate. Yes. Yes.
Sir, I have one question. That you told that
Yeah.
ID depends upon VGS and omega by L ratio. So is it depending
Yes.
on VTH also? As different MOSFET, the VTH will be different.
Okay. So yes, of course, the answer is yes, because in the expression, if you talk about the on resistance, it is VGS minus VTH, right? So, but for a given MOSFET, let's say you have fabricated a MOSFET, it will have a certain threshold voltage. Now, you are right that the threshold voltage will vary as a function of temperature. It will vary as a function of process. There is what is called as process variation. There is mismatch variation. So we will come to those things slightly later. But yes, the more precise answer is that R becomes a function of VGS minus VTH. So maybe I will just write it as VGS minus VTH. Okay. But for a given MOSFET, as just the threshold voltage is constant, it varies based on VGS. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so,
Yeah.
sir, but if we are using CMOS as a switch, sir, then we usually tend to have the gain as high as possible, sir. Making the switch as ideal as possible. So the transients should not exist in switch, sir.
Okay, so that is in the ideal world, right? But if you look at you don't have any switch in the world which has zero resistance, zero on resistance. All right. So
Okay.
you are partially in
There
the
will be
sense,
some transient. Oh,
yes, it
okay.
will always have a transient. Okay. Now,
Sir, we have a
when
class now.
yeah, we will conclude the class now. All right. So,
Okay, sir. Thank you.
yeah, the transient will be very, very small. When you talk about deep micron processor, the transient region will be in the order of some, few picoseconds or even lesser than that actually. Okay, a few picoseconds.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. Have a nice day. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.